Have you ever noticed how, like, the language we use around self-discipline sounds just incredibly violent?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's very aggressive.
Right, like we talk about conquering our fears or, crushing our goals
Right.
or forcing ourselves to focus. There's this deeply ingrained expectation that building discipline is, well, it's essentially an act of internal brute force.
Yeah, totally.
You set a goal, your brain inevitably resists, and you are supposed to just, you know, push harder until one part of you gives up. Either dominate your own brain or you fail.
And we culturally romanticize that framework so much. I mean, it feels very clean and binary, you know?
Right, the whole hustle culture thing.
Exactly. We love the idea of the lone warrior just uh, gritting their teeth, imposing sheer willpower over their own biology, and commanding themselves to do anything. It suggests that if you are failing to stick to a routine, it's simply because you lack moral fortitude.
But then you actually try it.
Yeah, then reality it's.
Right. You try to force yourself to wake up at 5 a.m. every single day, or you try to force yourself to meditate for an hour when your brain is just screaming at you to check your email.
Which it always does.
Always.
Right.
And suddenly that internal arm wrestling match doesn't feel so straightforward. You realize you are sitting at the table completely alone, wrestling with a ghost.
That's a great way to put it.
And the harder you push, the more exhausted you get. And the ghost just, slips right through your fingers, goes back to scrolling on a phone. I mean, the internal landscape of human motivation is vastly more complex than just trying harder.
It is. I mean, it represents a massive strategic paradox. Because the more you attempt to coerce and force the human mind, the more violently it will rebel against you.
Which is exactly why we are taking this specific journey today. So welcome to this deep dive, everyone. We have a rather profound mission ahead of us today.
We really do.
We are going to completely unpack the intersection of ancient yoga sciences, the true mechanics of mind control, and how those incredibly deep concepts actually translate into modern everyday discipline for you.
Yeah, and our guide through this landscape is some deeply philosophical, yet surprisingly tactical source material. We are looking at a comprehensive talk by Osman.
Right?
He's widely known to his audience on his YouTube channel as the Blind Muslim Yogi.
And he operates at this incredibly fascinating intersection of disciplines, too. I mean, he is an energy healer, an advanced yoga and meditation teacher, and also an entrepreneur.
Yeah, a very varied background.
Definitely. And his central thesis, the core premise that is going to, dictate everything we discuss today, it completely flips the script on how we view our daily habits.
It really does.
Osman argues that lacking discipline in your life is not a character flaw. It is a direct, unavoidable symptom of lacking control over your mind. And mastering that control is the singular, non-negotiable path to transcending our current state of consciousness and achieving true, holistic success.
But, before we delve into the actual mechanics of his system, we do need to lay down the groundwork regarding how he positions this knowledge.
Yes, that's super important to clarify right up front.
Right. Osman establishes a very clear boundary in his work. He is a staunch advocate for natural, ancient therapies to improve human health and overcome various ailments, but he explicitly frames these practices as complementary.
Exactly. That is a critical distinction for you listening to make right up front. These techniques are powerful tools for optimizing the internal system that houses you, but they are absolutely not a replacement for medical treatment.
No, not at all.
If you are dealing with a medical condition, you need to consult a licensed medical professional. We aren't talking about ignoring modern medicine here. We are talking about creating the optimal mental and physical environment for healing and growth to actually take place.
Yeah, it is about systemic integration rather than, substitution.
Well said. So let's start with the hook that completely rewired how I view my own brain.
Okay, let's do it.
Osman introduces this counterintuitive idea that you cannot force your mind to do what you want, but rather you have to negotiate with it.
Right, negotiation.
Yeah. He talks about the mind as if it is an independent entity sitting across the negotiating table from you. But before we can even figure out how to draft that peace treaty, we have to define who is actually sitting at the table. We have to understand what the mind actually is, and more importantly, what it isn't.
Right, because Osman begins by basically dismantling the most foundational assumption we hold about our own existence.
It's pretty wild.
It is. He points to something we could call the default illusion, which is essentially this crisis of mistaken identity that begins the absolute moment we are born.
So picture a newborn baby, right?
Mhm.
When your awareness first comes online, your perceptive tools are incredibly raw. You have zero context for the universe.
None at all.
And according to Osman, at that initial stage, your awareness only has knowledge of two active things, your physical body and your active mind. You feel the physical sensation of hunger or cold, and you experience the rapid, chaotic firing of primitive thoughts and emotions.
And because those physical sensations and mental activities are the default active states from day one, your pure awareness makes a logical yet entirely flawed deduction.
A completely innocent mistake, really.
Exactly. It assumes that because the body and the mind are the only things it can perceive, it must be the body and the mind.
And we spend decades building a personality on top of that flawed deduction.
Yeah.
We falsely believe that we are the meat suit, right? Or we believe that we are the constant stream of inner monologue narrating our day.
Yeah, that voice in our head.
But Osman leans heavily into ancient philosophical frameworks to argue that you, the core essence of the person listening to this right now, are actually the pure consciousness that transcends both of those things. You are not the body, and you are not the mind.
And to move this from abstract philosophy into undeniable reality, Osman provides some striking, extreme examples of human biology breaking down.
These really stuck with me.
Yeah, they're powerful. He examines what happens during moments of excruciating physical or emotional trauma. The clinical literature supports this entirely, by the way. In moments of extreme, unbearable pain, a person will often completely shut their active mind off.
Like a circuit breaker tripping.
Exactly like that. They experience intense dissociation. They retreat into a waking dream state. Or they become completely disconnected from reality, failing to recognize their environment or the people standing right in front of them. The mind essentially pulls the plug on its engagement with the physical world because the load is just too heavy.
And he parallels that with a purely physical example too, anesthesia.
Yes.
When you are prepped for surgery and given a general anesthetic, the chemical compounds systematically sever the body's ability to feel, and they quiet the active conscious mind to an absolute halt.
The brainwaves slow, the inner monologue goes totally silent, and physical sensation is zero.
And here is the critical mechanism behind those examples. In the trauma scenario, the mind has retreated and shut off reality. In the anesthesia scenario, the body is numb and the mind is chemically silenced.
Right.
Yet the person is not dead. The life force remains.
So the consciousness is still there, floating in the void.
Exactly.
And the fact that you can return from that void, carrying the continuity of your existence, proves a fundamental separation. The mind can be turned off, the body can be turned off, but the observer, the true self, remains intact. They are distinct entities operating in tandem.
I mean, think of it like driving a car. You feel the rumble of the engine through the seat, you control the steering wheel, and you watch the dashboard dials.
Right, you're interacting with it.
But if you spend your entire life inside that car without ever stepping out, you might eventually start identifying as a Honda Civic.
Yeah, you just assume that that's what you are.
But if the engine stalls or if you turn the radio off, you don't cease to exist. You are just the driver, sitting in a quiet, parked machine.
The issue is that the machine has been driving on autopilot for so long, the driver forgot they even had the ability to reach for the cues.
Wow. Yeah. But I have to admit some genuine friction here. Like, I grasp the logic. But if we aren't our minds, if we are just the driver observing the dashboard, why does it feel so overwhelmingly, agonizingly like we are the mind?
That's a million-dollar question.
Right. Let's talk about a highly relatable scenario. The 2 a.m. anxiety spiral.
Oh, we all know that one.
You are lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, and your brain is suddenly obsessing over an embarrassing email you sent 3 years ago, or catastrophizing about a meeting tomorrow.
Yeah.
In that moment, I do not feel like a detached, peaceful observer sitting in a Honda Civic.
No, it feels like you're trapped in the engine.
Exactly. It feels entirely all-encompassing. The panic is in my chest. The thoughts feel like my true voice. If I am separate from the mind, why is the disconnect so profound?
Well, it feels all-encompassing because the mind operates as a localized lens, and it is a highly dominant, highly active piece of machinery. You have spent your entire life operating under that default illusion we talked about.
Right, since day one.
Yeah. The mind has been running the show completely unchecked, so when you are caught in that 2 a.m. spiral, the mind is operating on its own massive momentum, generating a biological feedback loop of cortisol and adrenaline. You perceive the anxiety as you expect because the mind is the only lens through which your consciousness is currently accustomed to viewing reality.
So if the lens is covered in mud, the driver assumes the entire world is brown. I'm basically blaming my own eyes for a dirty windshield.
That is exactly it, and that leads directly into the most pivotal tactical shift in Osman's entire framework. If the mind is separate from your true consciousness, if it is the car and not the driver, then screaming at the steering wheel when the car is hydroplaning is entirely useless.
It's just absurd when you picture it that way.
Right. You cannot brute force a machine into alignment by getting angry at it.
Yeah.
The tactics have to evolve.
So we stop yelling at the dashboard.
Yes, please.
Which brings us to Osman's core strategy for actually taking control. And I love this because it completely subverts modern hustle culture.
It really does.
He introduces this concept that the mind operates like an independent entity with a will of its own. It is not just a hard drive waiting for you to type in new code. It is alive, it has survival instincts, and it has preferences.
Yeah, very strong preferences.
And Osman states as a rule that the mind will never respect you, nor will it submit to you if you try to forcefully bend it to your will.
And we can see the biological evidence of this constantly. When you aggressively force yourself to engage in a habit you fundamentally hate, you trigger an immediate threat response.
Your body just says no.
Exactly. The mind perceives coercion as a danger to its autonomy. It responds by generating immense friction. It makes you feel physically lethargic. It creates incredibly logical-sounding excuses to quit, and it triggers rampant procrastination.
I mean, imagine trying to tame a wild horse by just running into the pen and screaming at it to calm down.
That's a great way to get kicked.
Right. Or think about managing a deeply rebellious employee who thinks they know better than you. If you just slam your fist on a desk and scream, "Do this because I said so," what happens?
They hate you.
They might comply for exactly one day out of sheer intimidation, but the moment you turn your back, they are sabotaging the project, stealing office supplies, and sending out their resume.
Yeah, right, they're out of there.
And the mind does the exact same thing. You can force a diet for 2 days, but on day 3, the rebellious employee drives you to a drive-thru at midnight.
Because the strategy relies on coercion instead of persuasion, Osman points out that the mind can absolutely be brought under total control, but it has to come around to your way of thinking.
It has to be convinced.
Yes, you have to present evidence to this independent entity. The mind needs to be shown that the practices you want to implement are intelligent, that the outcomes are perceivable, and that the results are highly beneficial to its own survival and comfort.
But how do you actually prove that? Like,
Yeah.
how do you sit down at the negotiating table and provide undeniable evidence to your own brain that you know what you are doing?
This is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, because Osman points to ethical practices as the front line of this negotiation. He heavily emphasizes things like forgiveness and gratitude.
Right.
Usually, when we hear gurus talk about forgiveness, it is framed as a soft, moral imperative. You forgive someone because it makes you a noble, good person.
Right.
But Osman frames forgiveness as a highly selfish, tactical maneuver for hacking your own nervous system.
And the mechanism behind this is fascinating when viewed through a neurobiological lens.
Break that down for us.
Sure, when you hold on to a grievance or when you operate without gratitude, you are essentially keeping your sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight response, on a low boil.
It's constantly simmering.
Exactly, you are leaking energy and your mind is constantly scanning for threats. But when you actively practice gratitude and forgiveness, you are forcing a physiological shift. You replace that frustrated defensive state with serenity.
The physical tension literally drops.
Yes, your cortisol levels drop, the background anxiety hum quiets down, you begin interacting with your family and society with harmony rather than friction.
And the mind is sitting there observing all of this. The mind feels the drop in cortisol. It feels the lack of friction in your daily interactions.
Right.
And the mind essentially goes, wait a minute. When the consciousness makes us do this gratitude thing, I don't feel like I'm constantly under attack. My working conditions are drastically improving. I actually really like this.
The mind is a profoundly pragmatic entity. It doesn't care about moral superiority. It cares about positive outcomes and energy conservation.
It just wants to feel safe and relaxed.
Exactly. When these ethical practices bring about inculcated love and serene calm, the mind starts to respect your leadership as the driver. It recognizes that your commands yield better internal conditions. It submits to your wisdom because it wants to, not because it is being forced.
And this shift isn't just a subjective feeling of being nicer. It is a measurable physiological transition that Osman links directly to brainwave states.
Right, the science fully backs this up.
He talks about moving the mind from the beta state to the alpha state.
Yeah, and in neuroscience, which perfectly mirrors the ancient yoga sciences Osman is discussing, the beta state is our normal waking consciousness. It operates at a higher frequency, generally between 13 to 30 hertz.
Fast and busy.
Very active, it is busy, and it is highly analytical. But it is also the frequency where stress, anxiety, panic, and haphazard, disjointed thinking reside.
It's the 2 a.m. email spiral state.
Yes.
It's the rebellious employee frantically running around putting out fires, convinced the building is burning down.
And through the disciplined application of yoga and meditation practices, you intentionally slow those brain waves down into the alpha state, which operates roughly between 8 and 12 hertz.
So just bringing the whole system down a notch?
Right. Alpha is characterized by a profound sense of wakeful relaxation. When you are in alpha, your focus sharpens significantly, your chaotic thoughts settle, you become highly mindful, and counterintuitively, you experience a massive surge in available energy and contentment because you are no longer burning fuel on anxiety.
You are essentially giving that rebellious employee a massive promotion.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah, you take them out of the chaotic, noisy bullpen, give them a quiet corner office with a clear view, and say, just focus on this one task. Suddenly, the employee doesn't want to rebel anymore. They want to stay in that office. By gently guiding the mind from beta into alpha, you provide the ultimate negotiation leverage. The mind literally feels better.
Once the independent entity of the mind experiences the alpha state with regularity, the resistance crumbles. It stops fighting the discipline required to get there because it craves that state of flow. It begins to follow the driver's lead willingly.
That sounds incredible in theory, but let's get into the actual terms of the treaty.
The practical application.
Right. If negotiation is the strategy, how do we open the conversation without triggering the mind's alarm bells? Because knowing I need to gently shift my brainwaves into alpha is one thing, but actually sitting down on a cushion when my brain is screaming at me to look at my phone is a completely different reality.
And this is where Osman's advice becomes remarkably accessible. The strategy hinges on micro-habits and gentle development. He issues a very stark warning against adopting rigid, forceful routines right out of the gate.
Yeah, he specifically says, do not try to force yourself into a 1-hour meditation on day one.
Which is what everyone does, right?
Totally. New Year's Day, I'm going to meditate for an hour.
And it fails. Because if you try to impose a 1-hour meditation on a mind that is accustomed to constant beta state stimulation, the amygdala will flag it as a severe threat.
It panics.
The mind views that hour of forced silence as an attack on its autonomy and a terrifying sensory deprivation. It will fight back with everything it has. Instead, Osman advocates for flying completely under the radar of the mind's defenses.
I love this part.
He suggests starting with an increment of time so small it seems almost laughable, as little as 2 minutes a day.
2 minutes. I mean, you spend more time than that waiting for water to boil.
And that is exactly the genius of the mechanism. A 2-minute practice is so perceivably intelligent and requires so little energy that the mind cannot muster a logical reason to resist it.
It's just too short to hate.
Exactly. You completely bypass the threat response. You sit for 2 minutes. The mind experiences a tiny microdose of that calming alpha state, and then you are done. You allow the practice to blossom naturally over time as the mind slowly realizes it likes the feeling and begins to crave more of it.
It's a psychological Trojan horse. You disguise the discipline in a package so small the mind just waves it through the gates.
That's a perfect description.
And Osman actually provides the exact tool to execute this. He offers a free 5-minute yoga and meditation program specifically designed for this purpose.
Oh, that's incredibly useful.
Yeah, anyone can download it directly from his website at yogawellness786.com. Just 5 minutes. It is the perfect opening move in the negotiation. You tell your mind, look, I'm not asking for an hour. I'm asking for 5 minutes. We can survive 5 minutes.
And the mind agrees.
Right. Before the mind can even formulate a protest, the program is over, the nervous system is slightly downregulated, and the mind is left thinking, okay, that wasn't so bad.
The power lies in the daily repetition of that non-threatening, positive outcome. It builds an undeniable track record of trust. But Osman makes it clear that mind control cannot be isolated to a meditation cushion.
Right. It has to be a lifestyle.
Exactly. If you want to domesticate this independent entity, the systematic approach has to bleed into how you structure the entirety of your waking life.
Yeah, he outlines 2 extremely specific, systematic daily protocols that act as bookends for your day. The first is establishing a clear morning plan. You wake up and explicitly define, what is my specific task for today? And the second is an evening review. Before you go to sleep, you objectively assess what was accomplished, and you outline the plan for the following day.
Simple but profound.
Okay, but I really need you to connect the dots for me here.
Okay, go ahead.
Because I look at this progression, right? Doing a 5-minute program from yogawellness786.com, writing a morning to-do list, and checking off boxes at night. How exactly does a mundane to-do list escalate to transcending our current state of consciousness and achieving true spiritual mastery?
It does sound like a big jump.
Yeah. To a lot of people, that just sounds like basic corporate time management. It feels like a massive leap to go from I remember to buy milk to I have achieved a transcendent alpha state.
It sounds like a leap until you apply the science of cognitive load to the concept of the mind as an independent, anxious entity.
Okay, walk me through the mechanics of that. How does a piece of paper with a plan on it create psychological safety?
We have to look at the Zeigarnik effect in psychology, which basically dictates that the mind obsesses over uncompleted tasks.
Oh, right, like an open loop.
Exactly.
All right.
If you don't have a plan, your mind is forced to hold every single responsibility, fear, and obligation in its active working memory. It is constantly scanning for things you might have forgotten.
Which is exhausting.
It remains in a highly agitated beta state, convinced that if it relaxes for 1 second, you will miss a deadline or fail at survival. But when you write a meticulous plan in the morning and systematically review it at night, you are offloading that cognitive burden onto paper.
You are showing the mind physical evidence that the driver is competent.
Exactly. You are proving reliability. You are demonstrating to the rebellious employee that the CEO actually has a strategy. The mind observes this consistency over weeks and months. It realizes, I don't need to be in a frantic, anxious state, constantly scanning for threats, because the consciousness has a system. The system handles the survival tasks.
Oh, that is profound. The mind can actually let go of the steering wheel because it finally trusts that the driver knows the route and won't drive them off a cliff.
Yes. And that release of control is the absolute gateway to everything Osman is talking about. Only when the mind is cooperative, quieted, and relieved of its frantic survival duties can you begin to access higher cognitive capacities.
That makes total sense.
Because you cannot achieve transcendent states of consciousness when your mind is screaming at you about an unpaid electric bill.
You are essentially domesticating the mind through predictable, beneficial routines.
Precisely.
But this negotiation doesn't occur in a vacuum. Osman expands this framework outward, pointing out that our internal control is deeply intertwined with our external environment. There's a massive reciprocal feedback loop between the space we inhabit and the brainwaves we produce.
Oh yeah. Osman is incredibly direct about the role of physical spaces. He argues that a clean, deliberately organized environment naturally encourages what he calls a state of flow.
It visually invites calm into the nervous system.
Right. Conversely, he warns that an environment where everything is haphazard, messy, and upside down causes destructiveness to your mind.
Destructiveness.
Yeah.
That is a very heavy, aggressive word choice for a messy room.
It is, yeah.
He essentially states that it strips away peacefulness and prevents systematic thought. But wait, I have to challenge this, because reality is messy.
True.
Like when I am in the middle of a massive creative project, my desk is an absolute disaster zone. There are 3 half-empty coffee cups, sticky notes everywhere, open books stacked up. But in that mess, I feel incredibly productive. We've all heard the trope of the chaotic genius.
Oh, sure, the mad scientist vibe.
Right. So is Osman saying that's an illusion? Is the messy desk the cause of the chaotic mind? Or is it just a harmless symptom of a mind that is intensely focused on something else? Am I secretly sabotaging my flow state by having a messy desk?
It is a vital distinction to make. There is a difference between transient, active work mess and chronic, stagnant chaos. What Osman is pointing to is the continuous sensory feedback loop. The human brain is fundamentally a prediction machine. It constantly scans the environment to predict what will happen next.
Always looking for patterns.
Right. When you live in chronic, haphazard chaos where things are permanently disorganized and unpredictable, your eyes send constant signals to the amygdala that the environment is unstructured.
Which the mind interprets as unsafe.
Yes. Unstructured equals unpredictable, and unpredictable equals danger. So the mind stays locked in that agitated beta state. It refuses to drop its guard. If you are trying to negotiate a peace treaty with your mind, you cannot expect it to trust your leadership if you are forcing it to reside in an environment that constantly screams chaos.
That is so true.
Cleaning your physical space is a nonverbal act of persuasion. It tells the independent entity, look around, we are organized, we are in control, it is safe to enter the alpha state.
So you have to meticulously curate the evidence you are feeding your mind, internally through habits and externally through your physical surroundings.
Exactly.
But Osman is also highly realistic about the demands of the physical world. He addresses the concept of scaling this effort because he knows most people listening to this are not monks living in a Himalayan cave.
Right. We have jobs, families.
Exactly. He explicitly states that the concerted, serious effort required to master the mind does not mean you have to abandon your life and practice yoga for 3 to 10 hours a day.
Which is a huge relief for everyone.
For real.
He recognizes that for discipline to be effective, it must be deeply sustainable within the context of your actual life. The goal is integration, not isolation. He advises that you must dial your practice up or down according to the specific realities of your circumstances.
Your current season of life.
Right. Your financial stability, the demands of your career, and your crucial responsibilities to your close-knit family and society. These factors must dictate the volume of your practice. The power does not lie in the sheer duration of a single session. The power lies in the unbroken, systematic consistency over time.
And he takes that idea of family and society a step further, introducing a societal contribution piece that I found deeply moving, but also highly strategic.
It's a brilliant addition.
Osman asserts that a truly disciplined life must involve carrying out daily activities that bring some level of benefit to society, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant those acts might look to an outside observer.
And this circles perfectly back to the mechanism of the ethical practices we discussed earlier.
Like the gratitude and forgiveness.
Yes. When you engage in an act of service, no matter how small, you are actively shifting your brain's neural pathways out of the default mode network.
Which is what, exactly?
That's the area of the brain responsible for self-referential thought, ego, and rumination. It's where you worry about yourself.
Oh, got it.
When you serve others, you force the mind to look outward. You provide it with tangible evidence that you are connected to a larger whole, that you are a valuable contributor, and that you are operating from a paradigm of abundance rather than a paradigm of scarcity.
It reinforces that serene alpha state of harmony.
Yeah.
It's a brilliant interconnected web. The 5-minute meditation calms the immediate panic. The to-do list removes the background anxiety. The clean desk provides visual safety. The small act of service dissolves the selfish ego.
It covers all the bases.
It is all part of this grand, multi-front negotiation strategy to get the mind completely on your side. And what is the ultimate result? What happens when you actually win that negotiation and the mind fully submits to your conscious leadership?
That's the payoff.
Yeah, Osman synthesizes all of this into one ultimate conclusion. A disciplined mind becomes a massive, formidable weapon for success.
Formidable weapon. It is a striking, almost aggressive phrase, especially following all this discussion of gentle persuasion, peace, and harmony.
It really stands out.
But it perfectly encapsulates the sheer, undeniable power of a human mind that is fully aligned with consciousness. An unfocused mind is a liability, but a focused mind cuts through obstacles like a laser.
And we absolutely need to define what Osman means by success here, because it is not a shallow, materialistic definition.
No, not at all.
He defines success holistically. It encompasses vibrant physical health, deep peace of mind, strong and harmonious relationships, and the relentless pursuit of higher spiritual aspirations.
That's a whole package.
But he's also incredibly grounded. He includes the fulfillment of basic survival needs. Success means having decent accommodation and a comfortable level of income. A disciplined mind is the foundational engine that drives every single one of those outcomes.
And if we trace the logic backward, it is unassailable.
Walk us through it.
Well, if you cannot manage the independent entity of your mind, if you are constantly reacting to its chaotic whims, its manufactured anxieties, and its stubborn resistance to effort, how can you possibly build a trusting relationship?
You can't.
How can you systematically advance in a complex career? How can you maintain the consistency required for physical health? Every single external metric of success requires internal, sustained, and focused action.
Which brings us to the stark, uncompromising reality of Osman's message. He doesn't sugarcoat the alternative.
No, he is very blunt.
He lays down a final rule. Without this discipline, without this negotiated control over the mind, true holistic success is not just difficult. It is essentially impossible. He literally states that the chances of achieving it are negligible, dropping to zero.
It is a deeply sobering thought, but it is a necessary bucket of cold water.
Yeah, it wakes you up.
It strips away all of our comfortable illusions about luck, talent, or finding a quick fix. The prerequisite for any meaningful, lasting progress in any dimension of human life is a mind that is willing to cooperate with your conscious will.
So let's bring this massive paradigm shift all together. We have covered an incredible amount of philosophical and tactical ground today.
We really have.
We started by dismantling the default illusion, realizing that we are the conscious driver, not the active nor the machinery of the mind or the physical vehicle of the body. We learned that because the mind operates as an independent entity with its own survival instincts, brute force and coercion are guaranteed to fail. We have to sit at the table and negotiate.
And we explored the exact physiological tactics of that negotiation. You must present intelligent, highly beneficial practices to the mind. You use ethical habits like forgiveness to biologically replace a stressed, sympathetic nervous system response with serene calm,
Right.
gently guiding the brain from chaotic beta frequencies into focused, peaceful alpha states.
And we looked at the daily mechanics required to build that trust, utilizing the Trojan horse of microhabits, specifically starting with just a 2 to 5 minute daily practice. We discuss how organizing our physical environment provides a visual proof of safety, and how structuring our days with morning plans and evening reviews offloads cognitive anxiety.
This is a Garnick effect in action.
Exactly. And finally, we saw how scaling that effort while contributing to society ultimately transforms the mind from a rebellious employee into a formidable weapon for holistic, comprehensive success.
And the overarching, unavoidable lesson remains. Without laying that foundation of gentle, systematic discipline, that success remains a mathematical impossibility.
It is a challenging, intense, but ultimately deeply empowering framework. It means the control is actually in your hands, provided you use the right tool.
Yeah, you just need the right approach.
And remember, you do not have to start by climbing a mountain. You don't have to fight yourself today. You can begin this exact process of gentle negotiation right now with zero friction. You can access that free 5-minute yoga and meditation program, Osman, specifically designed for this purpose by downloading it directly from his website at yogawellness786.com.
It is a fantastic resource.
It is the absolute perfect, non-threatening entry point to begin domesticating your own mind.
It really is the smallest possible energetic investment that yields the highest systemic long-term return.
But before we officially sign off, I want to leave you with one final lingering thought to chew on as you go about the rest of your day. Something that builds on the realities of this independent entity we've been discussing.
Oh, what is the question?
If the mind truly is an independent, highly pragmatic entity, an entity that observes its surroundings, adapts to its environment, and only submits to what is perceivable and organized, what does that say about the environment we are currently feeding it through our glowing screens?
Oh, wow, yeah.
Think about your daily media diet. Think about the doom scrolling, the rapid-fire 15-second videos, the chaotic, fear-based information we voluntarily bombard our retinas with every single hour. If the brain is a prediction machine looking for evidence of safety or chaos, are we unintentionally training our minds to respect the chaos more than us?
That is heavy.
Are we handing that rebellious employee a megaphone and a steady stream of pure adrenaline and then genuinely wondering why the office is so incredibly loud?
That is a deeply unsettling but, absolutely necessary question. If the mind perfectly adapts to the environment it is given, we have to take a hard look at the digital cage we are holding it captive in.
Something to seriously ponder the next time you find yourself wrestling with that ghost. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive today. Take a breath, take back the wheels, start your negotiation, and take care of yourself.